Hey guys, tonight we're diving into one of history's strangest and most frustrating subjects misinformation. We live in an age of instant information, where we can fact check a story in seconds. But imagine a time before all that. A time when a terrifying and inexplicable disaster strikes, and the only sources of information are rumor, superstition, and the proclamations of a panicked and equally clueless government. Tonight, we're exploring the awful and often bizarre misinformation that spread like wildfire during the great plagues of the ancient world. We're heading back to the marble-clad streets of the Roman Empire at the very height of its power. A civilization that could build aqueducts and conquer continents, but had no idea what a virus was. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't have survived the bad information, let alone the actual plague. Forget the fever, you'd be undone by the cures. Imagine your neighbor telling you with absolute certainty that the best way to ward off pestilence is to buy a magical amulet made from the liver of a toad and to chant an incantation you found on a cursed tablet. In a world without a 24-hour news cycle to debunk this, you might actually try it. It would not end well for you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet and simple way to support the channel. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where and when you're tuning in from. Go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always a little fascinating to see our community of history lovers spread across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your world is made of stone, solid, permanent, and eternal. You are an apprentice to a master stonemason in the city of Rome. In the year 165 AD, you are living in what future historians will call the city's golden age, under the reign of the philosopher-emperor, Marcus Aurelius. The Roman Empire is at its absolute peak of power, prosperity, and territorial extent. The world feels stable, secure, and built to last forever. And you are one of its builders. Your days are filled with the clean, sharp smell of stone dust and the rhythmic, percussive music of your craft, the heavy thump of a wooden mallet striking the head of a chisel, and the sharp crack as the chisel bites into a block of travertine or marble. You are learning a trade that is as old as civilization itself, a craft of immense skill and brutal, physical labor. Your master's workshop is near the great forums, the heart of the city. Every morning, you walk through a landscape of architectural magnificence that still awes you. You see the colossal amphitheater, the Colosseum, its great bulk dominating the skyline. You see the Pantheon, with its breathtaking, coffered dome and its single great oculus open to the sky. You see the great aqueducts, the arteries of the city, striding across the landscape on their high arches, bringing millions of gallons of clean water to the city's fountains and baths. This is Rome, the center of the universe, and it feels indestructible. Your life as an apprentice is one of hard work. You learn to quarry the great blocks of stone, to use iron wedges and heavy sledges to split the rock along its grain. You learn the complex systems of levers, rollers, and pulleys used to move stone blocks that weigh many tons. It is a science of pure, raw physics, and you are learning the finer arts. You are learning to carve. Your master, a man named Lucius, teaches you how to use the different chisels. The point chisel for roughing out a shape, the claw chisel with its toothed edge for modeling the form, and the flat chisel for creating the final, smooth surface. You spend hundreds of hours practicing on scrap pieces of marble, learning to feel the way the stone responds, how much pressure to apply, the exact angle at which to strike. Your current project is a grand one. You are part of a team working on a new public bathhouse commissioned by a wealthy senator. Your specific task is to help carve the great inscription that will be placed over the entrance. You are carving the beautiful, formal Roman square capitals. The letters that will proclaim the glory of the senator and the permanence of Rome for 1,000 years. You take immense pride in the clean, sharp lines of a letter V, in the perfect curve of an S. You are, quite literally, carving the story of your civilization into stone. But your city, you know, has two faces. You work your days among the gleaming marble of the great public buildings, but you sleep at night in a different Rome. You live with your family in a cramped apartment on the 4th floor of an insula, one of the towering, shoddily built brick and timber apartment blocks that house the city's teeming masses. Your neighborhood is a world of narrow, noisy, and filthy streets, a maze of alleys where the sunlight barely reaches. The grand sewers that serve the villas of the rich do not extend here. Here, people dump their waste directly into the street from the windows above. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, of cooking, of unwashed humanity. This is the great debate that historians of your era will have. Was this truly a golden age of peace and prosperity? Or was that a reality only for the wealthy elite who lived in their grand villas on the Palatine Hill? Was the magnificent marble facade of Rome just a thin veneer over a world of widespread poverty, squalor, and precariousness living, as you do, between these two worlds? You know the answer is not simple. The city is a place of immense wealth and immense poverty, of magnificent order and of chaotic squalor, but it is your city, and it feels eternal. The first hint of a shadow on this golden world comes in the form of a rumor. It is a story you overhear in a tavern, told by a soldier who has just returned from the Great War on the eastern frontier. The emperor's co-ruler, Lucius Verus, has just won a great victory against the Parthian Empire. The legions have sacked the great city of Ctesiphon in Mesopotamia. They are returning home, victorious, their wagons laden with plunder. But the soldier, his face grim, speaks of something else they have brought back with them. A sickness, a terrible pestilence that swept through the legions as they marched through Mesopotamia. He speaks of a fever, a skin rash, a black diarrhea, and a swift, almost certain, death. He says the army lost more men to this sickness than to the Parthian arrows. You listen to his story, but you dismiss it. Soldiers are always full of wild, exaggerated tales, and it happened in a distant, foreign land, a hot, strange place on the other side of the world. Such things do not happen here, not in Rome. You go back to your work the next day. You are carving the word eternitas eternity into the marble architrave of the new bathhouse. The sun is warm on your back. The sound of your hammer and chisel is a satisfying, solid rhythm. The city around you is a testament to order, to power, to permanence. Your world is made of stone, and you know, with the unshakable confidence of your age, that it will stand forever. You do not know that the victorious legions from the east are marching home, and with every step, they are bringing the pestilence closer. You do not know that this disease, which future historians will call the Antonine Plague, likely a virulent strain of smallpox, will sweep across the entire Roman Empire, killing millions, perhaps as many as a quarter of the entire population. You do not know that it will shatter the economy, decimate the armies, and mark the beginning of the end of the very golden age you are so proudly carving into stone. You finish the final, perfect serif on the letter S. You stand back and admire your work. It is good. It is solid. It will last for 1,000 years. You are a builder of eternal Rome, and you have no idea that the world you know is about to be consumed by a firestorm of sickness and a tidal wave of lies. The sound of the tolling bells from the eastern parishes is a nightly lullaby of dread. But in the bright, confident, and noisy world of daytime Rome, it is easy to dismiss your master. Lucius is a practical man. He is concerned with the price of marble from the quarries at Luna. Not with the fevers of the poor in the distant suburbs. Your life continues in its familiar, reassuring rhythm of hard work in the clean, sharp smell of stone dust. The year turns. The city of Rome is preparing for a great celebration. The emperor's brother and co-ruler, Lucius Verus, is returning from the east. He has won a great and glorious victory over the Parthian Empire, Rome's ancient and powerful rival. The legions have conquered Mesopotamia. They have sacked the great capital city of Ctesiphon. The empire is triumphant, a grand triumph. The greatest and most sacred of all Roman rituals is being planned, and you are a part of it. Your workshop is given a prestigious commission. You are to help carve the inscriptions and the relief panels for a great triumphal arch that will be erected in the forum to commemorate the victory. It is the most important work of your life. The first of the victorious legions begin to arrive back in Italy, making their way towards the capital. And with them, the rumors you had heard from the lone soldier in the tavern return. But now they are a chorus. 1,000 voices all telling the same terrible story. You hear it from the legionaries who come into your workshop to see the progress on their arch. You hear it in the wine shops where they spend their back pay. You hear it from the dock workers who unload their equipment at the port of Ostia. They speak of the victory. Yes, but they speak of it with a strange, haunted look in their eyes. They tell you that the true enemy in the east was not the Parthian archer. It was a sickness. The stories they tell are a confusing jumble of fact and superstition. They tell you that the pestilence was a curse, unleashed upon the Roman army when a common soldier, in a fit of greed, broke open a golden casket in the temple of Apollo in the captured city of Seleucia. They say a pestilential vapor, a dark cloud, erupted from the box and has been following the army ever since. A divine punishment for an act of sacrilege. They describe the sickness itself with a soldier's blunt. Unadorned horror. A raging fever that makes a man feel as if he is on fire. A terrible black rash that covers the body. A cough that brings up blood. And a death that is swift, agonizing, and almost certain. They say that at the peak of the outbreak in Mesopotamia. The legions were losing more men each day to the sickness than they ever lost in battle. You are a stonemason. You are carving a great, heroic relief panel for the arch. It depicts strong, muscular Roman legionaries, their eagle standards held high, bravely defeating the bearded Parthian warriors. And as you carve, you are using as your models the very men who are telling you these stories. You look at their faces, which are supposed to be proud and victorious, but you see that they are thin and gaunt. You see the persistent, hacking cough that many of them have. You see the strange, new sadness in their eyes. You are carving an official, glorious lie into the eternal stone. The authorities in Rome, the Senate and the Emperor's court, do what governments always do in the face of bad news. They try to control the narrative. The official proclamations speak only of the great victory. The returning soldiers are forbidden from speaking of the sickness. But you cannot stop a story that is being told by 10,000 men. The whispers spread through the city. In the taverns, you hear the debate. A Greek physician, a man who follows the rational teachings of the great Galen, scoffs at the soldier's story of a cursed casket. It is not a curse, he says, his voice full of scientific certainty. It is a natural phenomenon. The army marched deeper into the east than any Roman army has gone before. They entered a land with a different climate, a different air, and they have encountered a local disease, a pestilence to which our Roman bodies have no natural defense. His theory is less exciting than the story of the golden casket. But it feels, to you, more chilling. The idea of a curse is frightening, but it is a story with a beginning and an end. The idea of a natural disease, a thing that simply exists in the world and that can be brought back home, is a new and more insidious kind of fear. This is the great debate that echoes through your city. Is the plague a supernatural event? A sign of the gods' displeasure, or is it a natural one? A consequence of the empire's own expansion. A dark and unintended cargo brought home along with the silks and spices of the East. The soldiers believe in the curse. The physicians believe in the climate. Both are wrong, but both are terrified. The city's priests decide they must intervene. They must gauge the will of the gods before the great triumph is held. You watch as the augurs, the official priests who read the omens, perform a public divination in the forum. They bring out the sacred chickens, kept in a special cage. The city falls silent as the chickens' cage is opened, and a handful of grain is scattered before them. Will they eat? And how will they eat? The chickens hesitantly emerge. They peck at the grain, but without enthusiasm. One of them, after eating a few kernels, turns and walks away. A low murmur of anxiety goes through the crowd. The omen is not good. It is not disastrous, but it is not good. The gods are hesitant. Despite the bad omen and the growing rumors, the city's elite remain in a state of willful denial. The plague is a problem for the soldiers. For the frontiers, it is a foreign sickness. It cannot happen here, not in Rome, not in the clean, well-ordered, and divinely protected center of the world. The city is preparing for a party. The day of the triumph arrives. It is the greatest public spectacle your world can produce. A magnificent and overwhelming display of Roman power and glory. The streets are packed with people, all cheering as the great procession begins. You are there, in the crowd, watching. You see the long line of senators in their white togas. You see the trumpeters, their horns blaring. You see the wagons piled high with the captured treasures of the Parthian Empire golden statues. Silver plates, bolts of exotic silk. You see the captured Parthian nobles, bound in chains. Their faces a mask of sullen defeat. And then you see the legions. What is left of them? They march, their armor polished, their eagle standards held high. They are the conquerors of the East. The crowd roars its approval, but you look closer. You see that the ranks are thin. You see that many of the men are marching with a strange, stiff gait. You see that their faces, beneath their helmets, are pale and slick with a feverish sweat as the legion passes the spot where you are standing. You see one of the soldiers, a young man no older than you, falter. His eyes roll back in his head. He stumbles. He is caught by the two comrades marching beside him before he can fall. They quickly, efficiently, and almost invisibly pull him out of the formation and drag him into a side alley. Out of the sight of the cheering crowd, the procession does not stop. The legion marches on, its ranks now having one less man. The crowd around you, consumed by the spectacle, does not seem to notice. But you have seen it. You have seen the official, glorious lie of the Roman triumph marching down the great boulevard. And you have seen the quiet, terrible truth of the pestilence being dragged, half-conscious, into a dark alley. The unseen army, the one that truly won the war in the East, has finally, officially, arrived in Rome, and its silent conquest of your city is about to begin. The great triumph of Lucius Verus is a magnificent, hollow spectacle. The city of Rome cheers for a victory that feels, to you, like a lie carved in stone. You look at the triumphal arch you helped to build, and you see not a monument to glory, but a testament to a truth being deliberately ignored. You have heard the stories from the returning legionaries. You have seen the sickness in their eyes, and you know that the army has brought back more than just Parthian gold. It has brought back a pestilence. In the weeks that follow the triumph, your premonition proves to be a terrible reality. The sickness, which had been a whispered rumor from the frontiers, now begins to speak in a loud, clear voice in the heart of Rome itself. It begins where the soldiers are housed, in the great, crowded barracks on the edge of the city. Then it begins to appear in the teeming, labyrinthine neighborhoods that surround those barracks, the districts where the poor, the laborers, and the common folk of Rome live. It starts in your own neighborhood. Your neighbor, a man who works as a porter at the markets, a man you have known your whole life, falls ill. You see him being helped into his apartment, his face slick with sweat, his body trembling with a violent fever. A few days later, the sound of his wife's weeping, a high, keening wail of grief, echoes through your crowded insula. Then his children fall sick. You see the symptoms for yourself: the raging fever, the sore throat, the terrible black rash that covers the body, the foul, black flux of the bowels, and the death, which is almost always certain, and which comes in a matter of days. This is not a common fever. This is something new, something swift, something utterly terrifying. As the sickness spreads, the city's authorities are forced to respond, but their primary goal is not to inform the public. It is to control the public. Their greatest fear is not the disease itself, but the panic, the chaos, the potential for riots among the city's vast and volatile population if the full extent of the crisis were to become known. And so, the first official lies begin. You see the new proclamations, written by scribes just like you once were, posted in the forum and on the walls of the public buildings. You read the Acta Diurna, the daily gazette of official announcements, and you see a masterclass in bureaucratic downplaying. The documents do not speak of a plague or a pestilence. They refer to the growing crisis as a grievous, but common, seasonal fever. They blame it on the unhealthy southern wind, the sirocco, or on the noxious vapors rising from the swamps outside the city due to the summer's oppressive heat. The official narrative subtly places the blame on the victims themselves. The proclamations state that the fever seems to be most prevalent among the lower sorts, in the unclean quarters of the city, among those whose intemperate habits and poor diet make them susceptible. The unspoken message to the wealthy and respectable citizens of Rome is clear: this is a disease of the poor. It is a consequence of their squalid way of life. It cannot touch you. This is a profoundly comforting lie. And the wealthy citizens of Rome embrace it wholeheartedly. They continue to go about their business, to attend their dinner parties, to visit the public baths. They believe they are protected by their wealth, by their cleanliness, by their superior station in life. You, however, live in the heart of the fire. You see the truth. You see that the sickness is not just affecting the intemperate, it is taking the strong as well as the weak, the sober as well as the drunk, the young as well as the old. You also see the quiet, desperate reality that lies behind the official pronouncements. You see the dead carts, which at first only came in the dead of night to collect the bodies with a grim discretion, now making their rounds during the daylight hours, their presence too constant to be hidden any longer. You see the city's graveyards, the ones outside the city walls, beginning to fill at an alarming rate. This is the great, central debate that future historians will have about your world. Did the Roman state have a concept of public health? Did they have a responsibility to protect their citizens with medicine and information? Or was their primary function simply to maintain public order, to manage the population, and to ensure that the grain supply was not interrupted? Your government's response to this crisis makes the answer clear. They are more concerned with preventing a riot than with preventing the spread of the disease. They believe that a comforting lie is a more useful tool than a frightening truth. The city's great physicians, the men like the famous Galen, who attend to the emperor himself, are mostly silent. They are as baffled by this new disease as anyone else. Their medical theories, based on the ancient Greek system of the four humors, have no explanation for a pestilence of this speed and virulence. And so, in the absence of a clear medical explanation, the official government narrative that it is just a bad fever caused by the weather is allowed to stand. The jokes in the taverns of your neighborhood are a form of black, desperate humor. The emperor's official advice, one man says, is to avoid the plague by being rich and living in a clean villa on one of the hills. For everyone else, he offers his official imperial thoughts and prayers. The government has declared this a mild indisposition. Another man scoffs, while the dead cart makes 3 trips a day down his street. But the official lie, this paper wall built of comforting euphemisms, is not strong enough to hold back the tide of death. the plague continues its relentless march through the city. It begins to move from the poor, outer districts into the wealthier heart of Rome. It begins to climb the hills. You hear that a senator's household has been struck down. Then a wealthy merchant. The disease, it turns out, is unimpressed by marble floors and fine silk robes. It does not care about your social status, the panic among the city's elite. Once they realize that their wealth cannot protect them, is a terrible thing to behold. Their comfortable denial shatters, replaced by a frantic, every man for himself terror. The great exodus, which had been a trickle, now becomes a flood. The roads leading north out of Rome are now choked with the carriages and the litters of the wealthy. A great panicked migration of the very people who, just a few weeks before, had believed themselves to be immune. The flight of the rich and the powerful is a devastating blow to the city's morale. It is a silent admission that the official story was a lie, that the situation is far worse than anyone was admitting. The government's attempt to control the city with calming misinformation has failed. And so they must turn to a new strategy. One morning, you see a new set of proclamations being posted in the forum. You go to read them. The language is different. The soothing, dismissive tone is gone. The new edict, issued in the name of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius himself, no longer speaks of a seasonal fever or an unhealthy vapor. It uses the old, stark, and terrifying word. A word that has not been seen on an official Roman document for generations. Pestilentia, the plague. The government has officially, publicly, admitted the truth. The lie is over. The city of Rome is in the grip of a great and terrible pestilence. You stand in the forum, reading the new proclamation, and you are filled not with relief at the truth, but with a new and even deeper dread. The government's attempt to control the city with comforting lies has failed, and you know what comes next. Now, they will try to control it with fear, with superstition, and with the angry, unpredictable power of the gods. The worst is not over. It has only just been officially announced. The emperor's official admission that the city is in the grip of a great pestilence does not bring clarity or calm. It does the opposite. By confirming the people's worst fears, and by tacitly admitting that the government's initial, soothing pronouncements were lies, the authorities have shattered their own credibility. The city is now adrift on a sea of fear, with no trusted captain at the helm. And into this vacuum of authority, this void of believable information, rush the opportunists, the charlatans, the quacks, the sellers of magical cures and divine protections. The forums and marketplaces of Rome, once centers of respectable commerce, are now transformed into a great morbid bazaar of false hope. You, a man of practical skills, a man who believes in the solid, tangible reality of stone and measure. Watch this new economy of fear with a kind of fascinated disgust. Your own work has completely dried up. No one is commissioning new buildings in a city where the primary construction project is the digging of mass graves. So, you have time to wander, to observe, to witness the strange and terrible marketplace that has sprung up to profit from the plague. You see them setting up their stalls next to the shuttered shops of the honest merchants. A man with a glib tongue and a colorful tunic sells small vials of a dark, viscous liquid he calls the Emperor's own plague water. He claims it is based on a secret formula from the personal physician of the great Augustus, and that a single drop each morning will make a man's body impregnable to the pestilential air. He sells it for a small silver coin a vial, and the desperate citizens of Rome line up to buy his worthless, sweetened sludge. Further down, another man, a man with the wild eyes of a fanatic, is selling amulets. They are small, crudely made pouches of leather, which he claims are filled with a powerful mixture of herbs, minerals, and a single crucial ingredient, the dried and powdered skin of a toad that has been fed on spiders. This, he proclaims, is a talisman of such power that it will ward off the demons of pestilence that now walk the streets. You watch a mother buy one, her hand trembling as she ties it around the neck of her small, scoffing child. The price of this small bag of filth and superstition is more than she would have earned in a week of washing clothes. The most successful of these charlatans is a man who calls himself a Chaldean astrologer. He sets up a large, painted chart of the heavens and offers to cast a personal horoscope for anyone who can pay for a hefty fee. He will tell you if your own personal constellation of stars makes you susceptible to the plague. And he will sell you a separate, even more expensive, list of rituals and prayers you can perform to change your own fate. He is doing a brisk business in selling customized paranoia. You realize that a man can sell anything if he first manages to sell fear. This is the historical reality of a world without a scientific understanding of disease. In the absence of a real, knowable cause, any and all explanations, from the magical to the divine to the conspiratorial, are given equal weight. The belief in amulets, in curses, in the power of magic words and astrological alignments has always been a part of your world. But the plague has supercharged these beliefs, bringing them from the shadowy fringes into the very center of public life. You see a friend from your neighborhood, a fellow craftsman named Cassius, and you see that he is wearing one of the toad skin amulets around his neck. You try to reason with him. Cassius, you say, how can you believe in this nonsense? This is a charlatan, a man who is growing rich on your fear. He looks at you with a mixture of hope and defiance. What else are we to do, he asks. The physicians know nothing. The emperor has fled. The gods are silent. This man, at least he offers something. What if he is right? Can you be so certain that he is wrong that you would risk your child's life on it? And you have no answer for him. Because in a world where the truth is unknown, a comforting lie can feel more powerful than a frightening uncertainty. This is the psychological puzzle that future scholars will debate for centuries. Why do people embrace pseudoscience and conspiracy in a time of crisis? It is not just a failure of education. It is a deep human need for a sense of control, for a feeling that there is an action that can be taken, a ritual that can be performed, a magic bullet that can save you in the face of an incomprehensible and overwhelming threat. A few weeks later, you see the dead cart stopping outside Cassius's house. The failure of these individual. Commercial cures becomes apparent to everyone as the death toll continues to rise relentlessly. The magic amulets do not work. The plague water does not work. The city's despair deepens. And so, the search for a solution, for an explanation, moves to a higher, more official, and more dangerous level. If the plague cannot be held at bay by individual magic, then perhaps it is a collective problem. A problem of the city's relationship with the gods. You begin to see the official priests of the Roman state, the pontiffs, moving through the city with a new sense of urgency and importance. They have an explanation, and it is a powerful one. The pestilence, they declare, is a clear sign of Pax Durum Irata, the anger of the gods. The Roman Empire has a sacred contract with its gods. The people perform the correct rituals and offer the proper sacrifices, and in return, the gods provide the empire with peace, prosperity, and protection. The plague is a sign that this contract has been broken. Someone, or something, in the city has angered the gods, and so begins a great citywide campaign of public piety and religious purification. The Senate, at the urging of the College of Pontiffs, decrees a series of massive public ceremonies designed to appease the offended deities. You witness these great, frantic, and desperate rituals. Processions of priests, their heads veiled, move through the streets, chanting the ancient, solemn litanies, carrying the statues of the gods from their temples. Great public sacrifices are held. Hundreds of the finest white oxen are slaughtered at the altar of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill, their blood flowing in rivers on the marble steps, the smoke of their burning entrails rising in a great, greasy plume over the city. It is a magnificent and horrifying spectacle, but the gods remain silent. The plague continues its work. The failure of the traditional Roman gods to answer the city's prayers leads the priests to a new and more sinister conclusion. If the great gods of Rome are not listening, it must be because their voices are being drowned out by the clamor of new, foreign, and impious gods that have been allowed to fester in the city. The blame begins to shift. It shifts towards the city's many followers of a strange, secretive, and stubbornly monotheistic cult that has been growing in the poorer quarters of the city. A cult that originated in the troublesome province of Judea. A cult that worships a crucified carpenter as its god. The Christians, you have seen them. They are a quiet, insular community. They refuse to participate in the public sacrifices to the Roman gods. They refuse to honor the divine spirit of the emperor in a time of civic unity and shared religious practice. Their exclusiveness is seen as suspicious, as arrogant, as deeply un-Roman. And now, this suspicion begins to curdle into a dangerous accusation. The whispers start in the forum, and they are amplified by the official priests. The Christians have angered the gods with their impiety. Their refusal to sacrifice is the cause of the divine wrath. Their strange god is the source of the pestilence. They are the reason Rome is dying. The misinformation has found its final, perfect target, a scapegoat, a small, misunderstood, and unpopular minority upon which the entire city can focus its fear and its rage. You see the first acts of persecution. A Christian meeting place is raided by the city guard. A Christian baker's shop is vandalized by a mob. You see men and women being dragged through the streets, accused of being members of this seditious, plague-causing cult. The charlatans in the marketplace, with their useless potions, were simply taking the people's money. This new phase of the city's madness, this new, officially sanctioned misinformation, will take their lives. The hunt for a cure has become a hunt for heretics, and a new, more human, and perhaps even more terrible plague of violence and persecution is about to be unleashed upon your city. The charlatans and their magic cures offer no relief. The man who sells the toadskin amulets is found dead in his own stall, his own useless charm clutched in his hand. The woman who buys the expensive plague water from the slick-tongued merchant dies just as quickly as the man who drinks only the filthy water of the Tiber. The people of Rome, having been failed first by their government's lies and now by the false promises of the marketplace, are left with only one remaining authority to turn to. They turn to their gods, to the city, which had been a landscape of individual, panicked acts of superstition, now becomes a stage for a great, organized, and city-wide performance of religious desperation. The official priests of the Roman state, the College of Pontiffs, who had been largely silent, now step into the vacuum of power. A new proclamation is carved into stone tablets and placed in the forum. You stand with the silent, fearful crowd and listen as a herald reads it aloud. The message is simple and terrifying. The pestilence is a case of Pax Deorum Eraeta, the peace of the gods has been broken. The gods are angry with Rome, the city, through some unknown sin, some collective act of impiety, has offended the divine powers that protect it, and this plague is their punishment. The only solution now is to appease them, and so begins a series of grand, frantic, and increasingly desperate public rituals. Your life, and the life of every citizen in Rome, is now governed by the religious calendar of this new crisis. The first great ceremony is Electisternium, a ritual of profound antiquity, reserved for only the most dire of emergencies. You watch as the priests, their heads veiled in mourning, solemnly bring the statues of the great gods out from their dark, incense-filled temples, the golden statue of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus, the silver statue of his wife Juno, the ivory statue of Minerva. They are all brought into the public space of the forum. They are laid upon magnificent couches, draped in the finest embroidered silks, and before them is set a great feast, a banquet of the finest foods and wines left in the city. The gods are being offered a meal, as if they were honored guests whose divine anger could be soothed by a show of mortal hospitality. The statues, of course, do not eat. They just stare out at the dying city with their cold, unblinking eyes. It's a very one-sided and very expensive. Dinner party. Next. The Senate declares a period of supplicatio, of public prayer and atonement. Great processions are formed. You and the other able-bodied men from your artisans' guild are ordered to participate. You march barefoot through the streets of the city. From the Temple of Mars the Avenger to the great Capitoline Hill, you join a vast, snaking line of your fellow citizens, all of you chanting the litanies, the ancient, repetitive prayers. Your voice is a low, moaning chorus of grief and supplication. The women of the city follow, their hair unbound, weeping and beating their chests in a public performance of sorrow. The entire city transforms into a single, great, weeping congregation. But the centerpiece of this new religious offensive is the sacrifices. The great stone altars before the temples, which usually saw only a handful of minor sacrifices each month, are now slick with the blood of hundreds of animals. The wealthiest families of Rome, what is left of them, donate their finest livestock in a desperate attempt to buy the favor of the gods. You see great, perfect white oxen from the best herds in Italy being led through the streets, their horns gilded, garlands of flowers around their necks, on their way to the sacrificial knife. The air of Rome, already thick with the stench of death, is now also filled with the smell of burning animal flesh in the cloying. Sweet smoke of expensive incense. The priests have decided that the gods are angry. The solution, apparently, is a city-wide barbecue. It hasn't stopped the plague, but the priest and the temple attendants are certainly eating well. You, the man of stone and logic, watch all of this with a growing sense of detachment and skepticism. You have seen the sickness up close. You have seen how it passes from one person to the next. In the close confines of a tenement building, you do not see how the slaughter of another 100 bulls will stop a man from coughing on his neighbor. But you hold your tongue. To question the official rituals now is not just impiety, it is a kind of treason against the city's collective effort. Your own craft is even co-opted into the service of this new religious fervor. As a stonemason, you are given a commission by the priests of the Temple of Apollo, the god of both plague and of healing. You are tasked with carving a new, hastily made altar and an inscription begging the god for mercy to Apollo, the averter of evil, for the health of the Roman people. You spend your days chipping away at the marble, your hammer and chisel creating a monument to your city's desperation, even as you doubt its utility. But the gods remain silent. Or, if they are speaking, their answer is no. The plague does not abate. The death toll on the daily announcements continues to rise. The sacrifices have failed. The processions have failed. The banquet for the gods has failed. The failure of the traditional gods of Rome to respond to the city's pleas creates a new and even more dangerous crisis. A crisis of faith. If Jupiter, the king of the gods, cannot or will not save his own capital city, then what good is he, the priests of the official state religion, their own authority now threatened by the silence of their gods? Come to a new and terrible conclusion. The gods are not angry without reason. They are angry because they have been offended. Their power is being challenged by the presence of other, foreign and in their eyes, illegitimate gods within the city, and their gaze falls upon one group in particular, a group that has always been an object of suspicion, a group that keeps to itself, that refuses to participate in the public sacrifices. That speaks of a single, all-powerful God and dismisses the great pantheon of Rome as a collection of empty idols. The Christians, the official misinformation campaign, which had once been about downplaying the disease, now pivots to a new and more useful narrative. It is a narrative of blame. You begin to hear the new theory being preached from the temple steps. The Christians, the priests declare, are atheists, for they deny the existence of the true gods who protect the city. Their impiety, their stubborn refusal to offer a pinch of incense to the divine spirit of the emperor, has broken the Pax Deorum. They are the source of the divine anger. They are the cause of the plague. The logic is simple, it is powerful, and it is exactly what a terrified and grieving populace needs to hear. The plague is no longer a random, inexplicable horror. It now has a face. It has a cause. It has an enemy that can be seen, and touched, and punished. You have seen these Christians. There's a small community of them in your own neighborhood. They are mostly poor folk, artisans and laborers. They are quiet, and they keep to themselves. They meet in secret, in private homes. You have always thought them strange, but harmless. But now, your neighbors begin to look at them with a new expression in their eyes, a look of cold, fearful, and righteous hatred. The first acts of persecution are small. A Christian baker's shop is vandalized, its door smeared with filth. A Christian family is refused service at the public market. But the anger, fed by the official pronouncements of the priests, quickly grows. You witness a scene in the street that makes your blood run cold. A mob, led by a man whose own child died of the plague just last week, surrounds a man who is known to be a Christian. They accuse him of being a sorcerer, a poisoner, an enemy of the gods. They drag him through the streets, beating him with sticks. You have seen the city ravaged by a biological plague, and now you are witnessing the birth of a social one. The search for a cure has become a search for a scapegoat. And the misinformation, once a tool for calming the public, has now become a tool for inciting a witch hunt. The grand, bloody sacrifices in the Roman Forum have failed. The gods, it seems, are not hungry for the meat of bulls. They are hungry for the people of Rome, the city's official religion. The great unifying force of the empire has proven just as impotent against the pestilence as the charlatans with their toadskin amulets. The city is filled with a new and more dangerous kind of despair, a despair that comes from the silence of your own gods. In this vacuum of divine favor, the priests of the city, desperate to explain their own failure and to redirect the people's growing anger, provide a new narrative. It is a story you begin to hear preached from the temple steps and whispered in the marketplaces. The gods are angry, the priests explain, because they have been insulted. Their divine majesty has been offended by a cancer in the city's soul, a secretive and impious cult that refuses to honor them. The pestilence, the priests declare, is the fault of the Christians. This is the new misinformation. It is a poison that spreads through the city faster than the plague itself. It is a simple, powerful, and deeply satisfying lie because it gives the city's immense and shapeless fear a single, identifiable face. You have seen these Christians. They are a strange and insular community, mostly made up of the city's lower classes slaves, freedmen, artisans, and women. You know them mostly by what they do not do. They do not attend the public festivals. They do not offer a pinch of incense at the small shrines to the emperor's divine spirit that are in every neighborhood. And, most damningly, they do not participate in the great public sacrifices that are meant to ensure the city's safety. They call the great gods of Rome Jupiter, Juno, Apollo nothing more than pagan demons. They are, in the eyes of the priests and the populace, atheists, for they deny the very existence of the gods that hold up the world. And now, you hear wilder rumors spreading. Stories about the Christians' secret rituals, because they meet in private and call each other brother and sister. People whisper that they engage in incestuous orgies, because they speak of symbolically eating the flesh and drinking the blood of their god. People whisper that they are cannibals who sacrifice newborn infants. These are the lurid, terrified fantasies of a populace that needs a monster to blame. This is a common historical reality of your empire. In times of crisis, a military defeat, a famine, an earthquake, the small and misunderstood Christian community has always been a convenient scapegoat. But now, in the face of this great and terrible plague. That scapegoating is about to become a matter of deadly, city-wide policy. You witness the change in your own neighborhood. You know a family, a quiet family of weavers who are rumored to be Christians. A few months ago, they were just your neighbors. Now, they are the enemy. You see the other residents of your insula begin to shun them. They are refused service at the local baker's stall. The word Christianus is scrawled in charcoal on their door. An accusation and a threat. The city, which had been united in its fear of the plague, is now divided by a new, more intimate fear of its own neighbors. Then the official persecution begins. It is not, at first, a great systematic purge. It is a series of popular, mob-driven outbursts. Tacitly encouraged by the authorities, you see a Christian artisan being dragged from his workshop by an angry crowd, accused of having cursed the neighborhood. They beat him in the street while the city guards stand by and watch. This is the great, debated question of the early Christian persecutions. Were they a top-down, systematic policy of the Roman state? Or were they mostly, as you are witnessing, localized, popular expressions of pagan anger and anxiety, which the authorities were often happy to tolerate and even encourage? Looking at the passive, almost approving faces of the city guards, you understand that the distinction is a fine one. To prove their own piety and to deflect any suspicion from themselves, the loyal pagan citizens of Rome now engage in a new kind of public ritual. The priests at the temples begin to issue documents called a libellus. This is an obscure but powerful tool of social control. A libellus is a small certificate, signed by a priest, attesting that the bearer has been seen to perform a public sacrifice to the Roman gods. You see long lines forming at the temples, not of the sick seeking a cure, but of the healthy seeking a certificate of loyalty. To possess a libellus is to possess proof that you are not one of the impious ones, not one of the Christians. It is a passport of piety, a document that separates the good, God-fearing Roman from the suspicious, plague-causing outsider. The city has simply traded one kind of certificate of health for another. The scribes, you think, must be thrilled by the new demand for paperwork. Your own life is touched by this new terror. One of your fellow apprentices in the stonemason's workshop, a quiet young man named Marcus, is accused by a neighbor of being a Christian. He is not. His only crime was to have said that the endless slaughter of bulls at the temples seemed a wasteful and foolish way to fight a disease. But a single, whispered accusation is now enough. He is arrested by the city guard. He is ordered to make a sacrifice to the gods to prove his loyalty. He, a good and traditional Roman, agrees, but the mob is not satisfied. They claim his sacrifice is insincere. He is dragged before the city prefect and is ordered to curse the name of the Christian god. He does so, confused and terrified. But the fear is a fire that needs fuel. He is beaten, and he is thrown into prison. You have seen how the plague can destroy a man's body. Now you are seeing how the misinformation that follows it can destroy a man's life, his reputation, his freedom, all on the basis of a single, careless word. But the most terrible part of this new wave of madness is its utter futility. The Christians are persecuted. Some are arrested. Some are killed. But the plague does not care. The death toll continues its relentless, astronomical climb. The scapegoating, the great public outpouring of rage and blame, has no effect whatsoever on the pestilence. The gods, it seems, are not angry at the Christians, or if they are, the execution of a few more of them is not enough to appease their terrible wrath. The city is left with its dead. It's dying, and it's new. Self-inflicted wounds of religious hatred. The official lies have failed. The magical cures have failed. The state religion has failed, and now, the scapegoating has failed. The authorities, the priests, the people, they are all completely and utterly out of ideas. The city seems to sink into a kind of lethargic, hopeless despair. The frantic activity of the past few months is replaced by a grim, quiet resignation. The city is dying, and no one knows what to do. And it is into this vacuum of hope that the emperor himself finally steps. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king. The great Stoic who has been leading the armies on the northern frontier returns to Rome. But he does not return with a new army or a new political solution. He returns with a new god. You hear the stories whispered in the city. The emperor, in his desperation, has consulted the most famous oracle of the age, a man named Alexander of Abanoticus. This Alexander is a religious entrepreneur, a mystic who has created a new cult around a god he has invented, Glycon, a man-headed serpent who he claims is a new incarnation of the healing god Asclepius. And this oracle has given the emperor a new magical cure, a new divine prescription to save the city. It is a single, simple, and utterly bizarre line of verse. A magical incantation that, if written down and displayed on the doors of the houses, will supposedly ward off the plague. The city of Rome, the capital of the most powerful and sophisticated empire on earth, having exhausted its government, its science, and its own gods, is now placing its final hope in a magic spell provided by a man who worships a talking snake. You, the stonemason's apprentice, a man who believes in the solid, tangible reality of rock and reason, are about to be given a new and truly insane commission. You are about to be asked to carve a magic spell into the walls of a dying city. The age of misinformation has reached its absurd and tragic peak. The scapegoating of the Christians is a brutal and bloody affair. But it is not a cure. The mobs get their violence. The priests get to deflect their failure. But the pestilence, indifferent to human theology, continues its grim and methodical work. The death toll does not slow. The gods, it seems, were not angry at the Christians after all. Or if they were, they have not been appeased. The city of Rome, having exhausted its capacity for lies, for magic, and for blame, now sinks into a profound and hopeless despair. The authorities have failed. The charlatans have failed. The gods have failed. There is no one left to turn to, and it is into this vacuum of hope that the emperor himself finally steps. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, the great Stoic who has written treatises on the nature of reason and the acceptance of fate, returns to the capital. He has seen the devastation in the provinces. He sees the terror in his own city. And he, the most powerful and most rational man in the world, in his desperation, turns to magic. You hear the news first as a wild rumor in the marketplace. It is a story so bizarre, so unbelievable, that you dismiss it as just another piece of plague-driven fantasy. The emperor, they say, has sought the counsel of the most famous prophet of the age, a man named Alexander of Abanoticus. You know of this Alexander. He is a controversial figure, a man some call a holy prophet and others call a masterful charlatan. He has created a new cult that is wildly popular throughout the eastern provinces, a cult centered on a new god named Glycon. Glycon, Alexander claims, is a new incarnation of the ancient god of healing, Asclepius. And Glycon has one slightly unusual feature. He is a snake, a large docile snake with a cleverly constructed and very convincing linen and horsehair puppet head, which Alexander uses to make the gods speak and deliver prophecies to his adoring and very wealthy followers. The emperor's new spiritual advisor is a man whose primary qualification is that he owns a very convincing snake puppet. The story seems too absurd to be true. But then, an imperial edict is posted throughout the city, and you see that the rumor was real. The emperor has indeed consulted the oracle of the snake god, and the oracle has provided a divine cure, a magical solution to end the plague. The cure is not a potion. It is not a sacrifice. It is a single line of poetry, a magical verse, which Alexander has assured the emperor will act as a divine shield against the pestilence if it is displayed above the doorways of the houses. The verse itself is almost laughably simple. Phoebus, the unshorn, keeps the cloud of plague away. Phoebus Apollo, the god of plague and healing, who is also the god of poetry, can apparently be defeated by a single, poorly constructed line of verse. The city, now completely out of any other ideas, seizes upon this new hope with a frantic, desperate energy. This is not the pronouncement of some back-alley charlatan. This is a divine remedy, endorsed by the emperor himself. It must be true, and so begins the next, and most surreal, phase of your city's response to the plague. The city's public health strategy is now poetry. You, the stonemason, are given a new and bizarre commission. A wealthy senator, a man whose household has already been decimated by the plague, summons you to his villa. He wants you to carve the magic verse into the great marble lintel above his doorway. He believes that the permanence of the stone, combined with the magic of the words, will create an impenetrable barrier against the sickness. You spend the next week carefully chiseling the absurd line of poetry into the hard, beautiful marble, and your craft, which once celebrated the military victories and the civic virtues of your empire, is now being used to inscribe a magical good luck charm, a piece of divine doggerel, onto a rich man's house. You have gone from being a respected artisan to a manufacturer of overpriced bumper stickers for the apocalypse. All over the city, the verse appears. You see it painted crudely on wooden boards nailed above the doors of the poor. You see scribes selling elegant, calligraphed versions on scraps of papyrus. You see it on every street, on every house. It is a city-wide mantra, a collective prayer, a desperate attempt to fight a biological reality with a magical phrase for a brief time. A new sense of hope flutters through the city. People have been given something to do, an action to take, a belief to cling to. They point to the verse on their doors with a kind of proud, superstitious confidence. They are protected now. They are safe. The Emperor's magic will save them. And then they continue to die. The man whose doorway you so carefully carved dies a week after you finish the inscription. The plague, it seems, cannot read, or if it can, it is not impressed by bad poetry. The failure of the Emperor's magical cure is the final, crushing blow. The city has now tried everything. It has tried official denial. It has tried marketplace magic. It has tried public sacrifice. It has tried scapegoating, and now it has tried a divine incantation from the Emperor himself. And all of it has failed. The city sinks into a new, deeper, and more profound despair. A despair that comes from having no hope left at all. The death toll continues its relentless climb. The social fabric has completely disintegrated. Rome is no longer a functioning city. It is just a collection of terrified individuals, waiting to die. It is in this atmosphere of absolute hopelessness that you hear the final, devastating piece of news. It is not a public proclamation. It is a quiet, secret rumor, whispered among the servants of the great houses. A story that confirms the city's utter abandonment. It concerns the one man who represented the last hope of reason and science in the city, the great physician. Galen is the most famous, most learned, and most respected physician in the entire Roman world. He is the emperor's own doctor. While other physicians have been as helpless as the priests, the city has held on to a sliver of hope that Galen, with his immense knowledge of anatomy and pharmacology, has been working quietly in his study, dissecting the disease, searching for a rational scientific cure. The rumor you hear, the rumor that is confirmed a few days later by its stunning, simple truth. Is this Galen is gone? He has not died. He has not announced a new cure. He has simply, quietly and secretly, packed his bags, and he has fled the city of Rome. He has returned to his native Pergamon, in Asia Minor, to wait out the plague in a place of safety, the greatest doctor in the world, the man who was the city's best hope for a rational solution, has given up. He has looked at the pestilence. He has weighed his chances, and he has run away. The news is a psychological catastrophe. It is a final, definitive statement that medicine has failed, that science has no answers. If the great Galen cannot face the plague, then there is truly no hope for anyone. You stand in the empty, decaying form of your once great city. The lie of the government has been exposed. The magic of the charlatans has been proven false. The gods are silent. The Christians have been persecuted to no effect. The emperor's own divine magic is useless, and now the last great man of science has abandoned you. Every pillar of your civilization government, commerce, religion, and science has crumbled into dust. All that is left is the pestilence, and the quiet, lonely, and individual business of dying. The news that the great physician Galen has fled the city is not a loud, public proclamation. It is a quiet, venomous rumor that slithers through the terrified, hollowed-out streets of Rome. But it is a rumor that everyone instantly knows to be true. It is the final, definitive admission of defeat. The priests have failed. The emperor's magic has failed. And now, science itself has packed its bags and run for the hills. The psychological impact on the city is catastrophic. It is as if the general of a great army, in the middle of a desperate, losing battle, has been seen galloping away from the front lines. A profound, nihilistic despair settles over the city. If the most learned physician in the world, the man who personally attended to the emperor, saw no hope and chose to save himself, then what hope could there possibly be for you, a simple stonemason's apprentice, or for anyone else left in this great, stinking tomb? The authority of the entire medical profession collapses overnight. The few remaining physicians in the city are now openly mocked in the streets. Their theories of humors and miasmas, which were once listened to with such reverence, are now seen as the foolish babbling of men who were no more useful than the charlatans with their toadskin amulets. The city's great experiment in trusting its experts has ended in a complete and utter rout. Your own life, like that of every other survivor in Rome, now becomes a stark and simple equation of survival. Stripped of all illusion, there is no help coming. Not from the government, not from the gods, and certainly not from the doctors. You are on your own. The city becomes a collection of 100,000 tiny, fortified islands of fear. Families barricade themselves in their apartments, trusting no one. The social fabric, which was already frayed, now disintegrates completely. The streets are empty, not because of any official quarantine, but because of a new, universal, and deeply personal one. Every man is an island, and every other man is a potential carrier of the pestilence. In the midst of this new, profound isolation, you are forced to become a different kind of observer, with all the grand, top-down solutions having failed. You begin to see the small, quiet, and bottom-up responses. You are no longer watching the great public spectacles of sacrifice or the frantic sales of magic cures. You are watching the simple, desperate, and often heroic drama of your immediate neighbors, and you begin to notice something in the great insula where you live. Your sprawling, multi-story apartment block. The plague continues its work, but you start to see a small, almost imperceptible pattern in the apartments where an entire family is struck down at once, or where the healthy flee from their sick relatives. Everyone dies. The apartments fall silent quickly, but in the few apartments where one person, a wife, a husband, a son, manages to stay healthy, or is simply less afraid, and chooses to care for their sick loved ones, the outcome is sometimes different. You see it in the apartment across the courtyard from your own. A weaver named Cassius, the man you had tried to warn about the useless amulets, has the plague, but his wife, a small, quiet, and courageous woman, does not abandon him. You watch from your window. You see her, day after day, performing a kind of simple, unscientific, and deeply compassionate medicine. She brings him cool water. She bathes his feverish face with a wet cloth. She coaxes him to eat a small piece of bread soaked in wine. She cleans the filth from his sick bed. She does not have a theory of medicine. She only has a sense of love and of duty. And Cassius survives. He is one of the very few in your building to do so. You see this, and you begin to understand a new and powerful truth. In the absence of a real cure, the simple practical art of nursing, of caregiving, is the most powerful medicine there is. To have someone to bring you water when you are burning with a thirst, you are too weak to quench yourself. To have someone to clean your body. To have someone who simply stays with you through the terror of the delirium. This, it seems, is the thing that can sometimes make the difference between life and death. This quiet observation leads you to notice something else, something that the city in its panic has overlooked. You notice the Christians. The community you once saw being dragged through the streets and blamed for the pestilence is responding to the plague in a way that is completely different from everyone else. While the rest of the city has retreated into a state of terrified individualism, the Christians are doing the opposite. They are actively seeking out their own sick. They have organized themselves. They bring food and water not just to the members of their own community, but sometimes even to their pagan neighbors. They do not seem to be afraid, or if they are, their faith gives them the strength to overcome it. And you notice, with a sense of baffled wonder, that their survival rate seems to be higher than that of the general population. Why, the question is a profound mystery to you. Is it a miracle? As they themselves claim, is there strange? Crucified God truly protecting them? Or is it something more practical? Is it simply that their strong communal bonds, their ethic of caring for one another, provides them with a social and medical safety net that the rest of the atomized, terrified city lacks? In a plague where simple nursing care can mean the difference between life and death. The Christians, with their tight-knit community and their religious devotion to caring for the sick, have created the most effective public health system in the city. This is a great historical debate that will puzzle scholars for centuries. Why did the Christian church grow so rapidly during and after the great plagues of the Roman Empire? Was it the appeal of its theology of an afterlife in a world so full of death? Or was it the simple, powerful, and attractive example of its social reality? A community that, in the face of an apocalypse, chose to care for its own, and in doing so, managed to survive better than anyone else. You do not know the answer. You only know what you see with your own eyes. While the followers of Jupiter were sacrificing bulls and the followers of Galen were fleeing the city, the followers of Christ were nursing their sick, and they were living. The final stage of your own education in the miserable reality of the plague comes with a personal test. A family in the apartment below your own falls ill. The father dies quickly, then the mother. They have one remaining child, a girl of about 10 years old. She is now an orphan, alone in the apartment with the bodies of her parents and a developing fever of her own. You can hear her thin, weak cries through the floor. Your neighbors in the building are terrified. They bar their own doors. Their solution is to let the girl die alone, and then to notify the dead cart. You are faced with a choice. You can do what everyone else is doing. You can stay in your room, protect yourself, and listen to a child die. Or you can act. You can put into practice the quiet, terrible, and compassionate lessons you have learned from watching your city fall apart. You think of your own hands, the hands of a stonemason, hands that were meant to build strong, permanent things. You think of the futility of everything you have witnessed, the lies of the government, the magic of the charlatans, the rituals of the priests, the flight of the great physician. All of it was useless. All that is left is the simple, terrifying, and profoundly human act of caring for another person. You take a clay jug and you fill it with clean water from your own small cistern. You find a clean linen cloth, and you leave your apartment. You walk down the silent, empty corridor to the door of your dead neighbor's home. You push open the door. The stench of death and sickness inside is overwhelming. You see the two bodies of the parents, and you see the small girl, huddled on a pallet in the corner, her body trembling with fever. She looks at you, her eyes wide with fear. She thinks you have come to drag her away, or to seal her in. You do not speak. You simply kneel down beside her, you dip the cloth in the cool water, and you gently begin to bathe her hot face. You offer her a sip of water. It is not a cure, it is not a magic spell. It is not a prayer. It is just a cup of cold water, given in the dark, but in this city of lies and despair, it is the only true medicine left in the world. And you, the stonemason's apprentice, have finally become a healer. Your decision to enter the dead woman's apartment, to care for her orphaned, feverish child, is a step across the threshold. You leave the world of the passive, terrified observer, and you enter the world of the active participant. You are no longer waiting for a cure from the heavens or a solution from the authorities. You have decided to act, even if you do not know what to do. This small, quiet act of compassion is a rebellion against the despair that has consumed your city. You care for the little girl. Her name is Aurelia. You do not have the complex theories of your old master, the physician Galen. You do not have the magical amulets of the charlatans or the sacred verses of the emperor. You have only your two hands, a bucket of cool water, and a sense of profound, desperate empathy. Your medicine is simple. When she burns with fever, you bathe her forehead with a cool, wet cloth. When she cries out from thirst, you hold a cup of water to her cracked lips, coaxing her to drink, drop by drop. When she is lucid, you speak to her in a calm, soothing voice. When she is lost in delirium, you simply sit with her, a quiet, steady presence in her terrifying darkness. You clean the sick room. You keep her as comfortable as you can. You expect her to die. Everyone dies. But she does not die. After 3 days of raging fever, you wake one morning to find her sleeping peacefully. The fire in her skin has receded. Her breathing is deep and even. When she wakes, her eyes are clear. She asks for food. Her survival is a quiet miracle. It is a thing that defies the logic of your plague-stricken world. And it teaches you a lesson more profound than any you have ever learned from a book. You did not have a cure. You could not fight the disease itself, but by fighting its symptoms, by fighting the dehydration with water, the fever with cool cloths, the despair with your presence, you gave her body the chance to fight its own battle. You did not cure her. You helped her to survive. The news of the orphan girl's recovery spreads quietly through your great tenement building. The insula, in a world where the only news is of death. A story of survival is a powerful and shocking thing. Your neighbors, who had barricaded themselves in their apartments, begin to look at you differently. They look at you not with fear, but with a new, tentative hope. They begin to come to you. An old man whose wife has the fever, a young mother whose baby is sick. They do not see you as a physician. They know you are just a stonemason's apprentice, but they see you as someone who, in the face of the apocalypse, chose to act, and whose actions seem to have worked a small miracle. A new, strange community is born in the heart of your decaying building. You, the young apprentice. A few of the older women who have a deep, practical knowledge of folk remedies and nursing care, and the small Christian family from the floor above, who, when they hear what you are doing, emerge from their own isolation and offer their help. Their faith seeming to give them a strength and a fearlessness that is baffling to you. Together, you form an informal clinic, a small island of practical care in a sea of chaos and superstition. Your new work is not based on grand theories, but on simple, observable truths. You learn from the old women, They teach you which herbs can be brewed into a tea to soothe a cough, which leaves can be made into a poultice to cool an inflamed sore. You learn about willow bark for fevers, about chamomile and lavender to calm the terrified and help them rest. This is the simple, domestic medicine of women, a knowledge that has been passed down for generations. A knowledge that the great male physicians of Rome, with their texts and their theories, have always dismissed as kitchen physics, but you are seeing now that it has a real, if limited, power. This is the great, unwritten history of medicine, a story that future historians will struggle to uncover. Was the real, day-to-day work of healing in the ancient world done by the famous physicians with their heroic, and often harmful, theories? Or was it done by the quiet, anonymous women in their own homes, with their practical knowledge of herbs and their compassionate skills in nursing? In your small, desperate clinic in a Roman insula, you are living the answer. You and your small team work tirelessly. You cannot save everyone. The plague is still a monstrously powerful foe. Many of the people you care for still die, but your successes are undeniable. The survival rate in your building becomes noticeably higher than in the surrounding tenements. You learn that your enemy is not just the fever itself, it is the symptoms that kill. It is the dehydration that weakens the body. It is the secondary infections that take hold in a body that is too weak to fight them off. It is the despair that makes a person give up. And these are enemies you can fight. Your work is a constant, exhausting battle. But it is a battle that has a purpose. You have found a new craft. It is not the grand, permanent craft of carving stone. It is the humble, ephemeral, and infinitely more important craft of keeping people alive for one more day. You contrast what you are doing here, in your small, self-organized community, with the failed grand gestures of the powerful outside your building. The city is still in the grip of misinformation. You see a religious procession pass by, the priests chanting for the gods to save them. You see a man across the street carefully carving the emperor's magic verse above his door. You hear of a new, expensive antidote being sold in the market, made from the sweat of a gladiator. All of it is useless. All of it is a distraction from the simple, quiet, and difficult work of actual care, your new medical specialty. You sometimes think with a dark humor, is the revolutionary practice of making sure people are clean and have enough water to drink? It's less glamorous than prescribing amulets made of toad skin, but it has a surprisingly better success rate. Your little community, with its common sense nursing, has become the most advanced public health institution in the city. As the plague begins to burn itself out, its fuel of human life nearly exhausted, your small island of survivors emerges into a quieter, emptier city. You have lost many of your neighbors, but you have also saved some, and you have gained a new family. The young orphan girl, Aurelia, is now your charge. Your adopted daughter, the Christian family, whose quiet courage you have come to deeply respect, are now your closest friends. You are no longer alone. The city of Rome slowly, painfully, begins the process of recovery. But you know it will never be the same. The plague has not just killed its people, it has shattered its certainties. It has revealed the impotence of its gods, the foolishness of its emperors, the failure of its great physicians. You stand with Aurelia at your window, looking out over the scarred but surviving city. The air is cleaner now. The sounds of life are beginning to return. You are no longer just a stonemason's apprentice, a man who carves the stories of others into stone. You are a man who has lived through the end of a world and has found, in the midst of the ruin, a new and more profound purpose. You have discovered that the opposite of death is not a magic cure or a divine intervention. It is the simple, stubborn, and profoundly human act of caring for another. In the absence of a cure, you have learned, care is the only medicine that truly matters. The act of caring for the young orphan. Aurelia, is an anchor in the chaotic sea of your life. It is a single, simple, and meaningful task in a world that has lost all meaning. Her survival, against all odds, becomes your own quiet. Personal victory against the plague. A victory won not with magic or theory, but with cool water and patient kindness. The great pestilence, the Antonine Plague, eventually burns itself out, like a great fire that has consumed all its available fuel. It recedes, leaving behind a city that is scarred, silent, and vastly emptier than before. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius, having seen his magic versus fail, devotes himself to the Stoic philosophy of his meditations, trying to govern a broken empire with a sense of grim, philosophical duty. The great physician Galen eventually returns to Rome, but his reputation, and the reputation of the entire medical profession, is forever tarnished. And you live, years pass. You are an old man now. The city of Rome has recovered, but it has never regained the shining, confident glory of its golden age. The plague has left a permanent scar on its soul, a lingering trauma of fear and mistrust. You have raised Aurelia as your own daughter. You have taught her the skills of your old trade, the art of the stonemason. But you have also taught her the lessons you learned during the plague. You have taught her to be skeptical of easy answers and grand promises. You have taught her to trust what she can see with her own eyes. And you have taught her that the most valuable skill in the world is not the ability to carve stone, but the ability to care for another human being. You often walk with her through the streets of the city, and you see the ghosts of the misinformation that once ruled your world. You see a grand temple, its altars now cold and rarely used. You remember when it was the scene of frantic, bloody sacrifices, the desperate attempt to appease angry gods who were not listening. You pass the house where the senator lived, the man who hired you to carve the emperor's magic verse into his marble lintel. The verse is still there, a faint, weathered inscription. He and his entire family died anyway. The verse is now just a sad, ironic monument to a failed hope. You walk through the forum, and you see a new generation of charlatans selling new kinds of magic potions for new kinds of fears. The business of misinformation, you realize, is as eternal as Rome itself. One evening, you and Aurelia are sitting on the steps of the Temple of Saturn, looking out over the forum as the sun sets. The air is cool and peaceful. She asks you, as she often does, to tell her the stories of the Great Plague. She is fascinated by the time she cannot remember, the disaster that shaped her own life. What was the worst part, she asks? Was it the sickness itself, the fear of dying? You are quiet for a long time, thinking. You remember the fevers, the pain, the stench of death. You remember the terror of seeing your friends and neighbors fall. But you realize now that the disease itself was only half of the horror. No, you say, finally. Your voice, the quiet, gravelly voice of an old man. The pestilence was a terrible thing. It was a fire that burned through the city, but the fire would have eventually burned itself out. The worst part, the most destructive part, was the other plague, the plague of lies. You tell her that the real poison was not the sickness in people's blood, but the fear and the falsehoods that infected their minds. It was the official lie from the government that told them not to worry, that it was just a common fever, a lie that left them unprepared. It was the greedy lie of the charlatan that sold them a useless amulet for their last coin. It was the pious lie of the priest that told them to blame their neighbors for the anger of the gods. It was the desperate, magical lie of the emperor himself that told them a line of poetry could save them from death. The plague killed the body. You say to her, but the lies, they killed the city's soul. They turned neighbor against neighbor. They made people cruel. They made them abandon reason. They made them lose faith in their leaders, in their gods, in their doctors, and finally, in each other. This is the final, great debate of your long life. What is more dangerous to a civilization? the external threat of a disease, or the internal collapse of reason. Of trust. Of social cohesion that so often follows. Looking back on the ruin of your golden age, you know the answer. You have come to believe that the virus that attacks the body is a simple, biological foe. But the virus of misinformation, the one that attacks the mind and the spirit of a city, is a far more dangerous and more lasting pestilence. The city of Rome has survived the Antonine Plague, but its soul, is still haunted by the lies. You and Aurelia get up to walk home as the last light fades from the sky. You pass the great triumphal arch you worked on as a young, proud apprentice. The inscription you carved so carefully is still there, its letters sharp and clear in the twilight, Eternitas. Eternity. You look at the word, and you smile a sad, wise, old man's smile. You know now that nothing is eternal. Not empires, not cities, not even the great solid stone itself. But you look at your daughter, this young woman you saved with a simple act of care, this living proof of the city's resilience, and you realize that perhaps the stones and the lies all crumble in the end, but that the quiet, simple, and stubborn truth of human kindness is the only thing that truly endures. The old stonemason and his daughter walk away from the shadowed forum, their footsteps a quiet echo in the Roman night. The great monuments of his youth and the ghosts of the plague he survived fade into the mists of the past. His long, hard lesson is learned. His story is complete. Let the image of him, a man who learned the weight of lies and the simple power of truth, now find its own quiet peace. Your own journey is also over for tonight. Leave the ancient city of Rome behind. Leave its plagues and its politics, its forums and its fevers. Return to the familiar comfort and the gentle quiet of your own room, in your own time, a world away from the echoes of history. The air around you is still and calm. The only sound is the soft, steady rhythm of your own breathing. Feel the day, with all its thoughts and all its cares. Begin to release its hold on you. Feel the weight of your own body as it sinks into the comfort of your bed. A safe and peaceful harbor. The stories are done. The history is at rest. The darkness that waits behind your eyes is a warm and welcoming friend. It is a place of quiet, a place of peace, a place where there are no questions and no answers. Only the simple, healing act of letting go. Allow yourself to drift into that gentle darkness. Let the last of your thoughts dissolve like mist in the morning sun. There is nothing left to do now but to sleep.